Hi, I'm Tyler. Today we're going to do some examples on aggregate supply and aggregate demand shifts and see what causes them and what happens when they do it. Alright, so let's look and see what happens when government spending decreases. So we'll say government spending decreases. So what happens here? Aggregate demand, remember, is equal to consumption plus investment plus government spending plus net exports. And so since government spending is part of aggregate demand, when government spending decreases, aggregate demand will decrease. Alright, so now what is going to happen if consumption spending goes up? Remember, consumption is part of aggregate demand, so aggregate demand is going to increase. So what happens if government increases income tax? This one's a little bit trickier because it's not directly a part of the either of the equations, but what will happen when income tax increases is that disposable income will go down for people. And what that means is that they'll have less money to spend, and so they'll consume less. Remember, consumption is part of aggregate demand, and so aggregate demand will decrease. Alright, so that was a fiscal policy example with the income tax. Let's look at a monetary policy example. So let's say that the Federal Reserve increases the money supply. So again, this is a little bit tricky because it's not directly part of either of these, the money supply, but let's think about what happens when the Fed increases the money supply. The interest rate goes down, and then as such, the lower interest rate incentivizes businesses to spend more and invest more, and so when a lower interest rate is present, investment spending goes up. So investment spending, remember, is part of aggregate demand, so an increase in the money supply will increase the aggregate demand. Alright, we've been doing a lot about aggregate demand. Let's take a look at something that would shift aggregate supply. So let's say that the price of oil goes up. So oil is a pretty common input for a lot of industries, and when the price of an input, which is the cost of production, goes up, the aggregate supply curve shifts in, it decreases, and it'll shift to the left. Because it's more expensive to produce what you were going to produce already, because oil is more expensive. Your inputs are more expensive, it becomes more expensive to produce at any given quantity. So let's look at a little bit more subtle one. Let's say that there's been really good weather. Now you might think, what does weather have to do with economics? Something, I promise you. So say there's been really good weather. Think about it like I like to think about it like farming. So say that there's just been a really good growing season, it's been raining plenty, sunny, everything is going really good as far as growing crops go. So what it's going to do is it's going to increase the amount that you can produce at any given cost level. It's going to decrease the cost of production essentially for every individual unit. So what that's going to do is it's going to shift the aggregate supply to the right because it increases it. Alright, so now we know what shifts these curves, but let's look and see what happens when these curves shift. So let's say the aggregate demand decreases. Maybe government spending decreased, something like that, consumption goes down. Anyways, we're here. Let's see what the implications of that are. So we used to be at this price level, at this output. What happens when aggregate demand shifts in is we move to a lower price level and a lower output. So when aggregate demand decreases, price level decreases and output decreases. Alright, so that was a decrease in aggregate demand. So now let's see what happens when you increase aggregate demand. Maybe government spending increased, or net exports increased. Doesn't really matter, just that all that matters is it increased. So we were here and here. Now we're at a higher price level and a higher real output. So the complete opposite, which makes sense, of a decrease in aggregate demand is that when aggregate demand increases, price level increases and real output increases. Both of these, when aggregate demand moves, move in the same direction as aggregate demand. So that was demand. Let's look and see what the implications of shifts in aggregate supply are. So let's say that aggregate supply shifts into the left, it decreases. Maybe price of oil went up, like we looked at, or something else, wages go up. Anyways, we're here. So what happens is we move to a higher price level and a lower real output. So when aggregate supply decreases, price level goes up, and output goes down. Alright, so that was a decrease, so let's see what happens when aggregate supply increases. Again, it's just the opposite of when it's a decrease. So price level goes down, and output goes up. So when aggregate supply increases, price level goes down, output goes up. When it decreases, price level goes up, output goes down. So output is directly correlated with the shift of aggregate supply. So if aggregate supply goes up, output goes up, aggregate supply goes down, output goes down, and price level is the opposite. So if aggregate supply goes up, price level goes down. If aggregate supply goes down, price level goes up. So it's the inverse for price level. Remember that notation might be different than your professor's, so check that before turning in your assignments. And if you have any questions, leave a comment on the video or post in the discussion on the YouTube page.